Hi, everyone. Welcome back to WorkTech. We've got some industry news, and this is breaking news. Crosschq, a talent intelligence platform, announced the acquisition of TalentWall, an emerging recruiting workflow automation and analytics platform. And we have the best possible people here to talk to us about this deal. Crosschq's co-founder and CEO, Mike Fitzsimmons, and TalentWall's co-founder and CEO, Jake Paul, are both here to talk to us about it. Welcome.
Hey, George.
Thanks, George.
Yeah, it's good to see you both, and congrats on this deal. It's a really interesting deal. I think we were talking before we started recording. It's a sign of maybe things to come. But for those that don't know Crosschq or TalentWall, let's start with a quick intro and a bit on what your companies do. Mike, we'll start with you.
Yeah, and again, George, thanks so much for having us today and for hosting the conversation. I'll give you a quick little backstory on Crosschq and how we started the company, and then tell you where we are in our journey. But the long story short, my co-founder and I are both serial entrepreneurs, having started and operated more than a half a dozen companies in our experience, including an IPO on NASDAQ among the group. And through that experience, we've just become increasingly frustrated with the lack of data that was available to assist our talent leaders in optimizing hiring. And so that's really where we started as an organization, was how do we kind of add more data into the entire workflow to help optimize quality of hire? And that has remained our North Star goal. So when you think about where the company is today, we are a talent intelligence platform, as you mentioned, with this idea and this focus of bringing more data and infusing more data into the entire hiring process. To date, we've raised about $40 million, a little south of $40 million, from investors like Tiger, Bessemer, GGB, and strategics like SAP, Salesforce, Slack, among others. So based here in the US, offices in Argentina, and really excited about where we are in our journey.
Great, thanks. Jake?
Yeah, I'm Jake. I'm the co-founder and CEO of TalentWall. We are, as you said, a recruiting analytics platform, really helping teams get more efficient, collaborative, and just generally better about understanding through data their processes and how to be better and more efficient organizations. And so my background is actually recruiting, where I've been using a variety of ATSs throughout my career, and really just wanted to start building solutions to make the lives of recruiting professionals, recruiting leaders easier. And so really started building this about 5 years ago, from that perspective of somebody who's in the trenches of trying to build a tool that can actually help us do our jobs, not just sort of be able to sort of flash a nice headline about what it is that we do, but actually genuinely offering value. And so, that's kind of how we got started. And 5 years later, we are, 300 customers or so deep. The platform itself has evolved pretty tremendously throughout the years, as we've been really sort of absorbing the feedback from some of these world-class customers that we work with. And then just obviously joining up with Crosschq is a pretty big deal for us, and which we'll obviously get into later in this conversation.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I'm curious, what did you both see happening in the market, or how did this deal come together? What was the impetus? How did it all happen?
Well, so just current market conditions notwithstanding, we were obviously working on this well before what we're all spinning, the spin cycle we're in at the moment. But I'll tell you, like at a kind of high level perspective, you think about kind of gaps in markets or markets and gaps, right? And it's our point of view that talent intelligence is a market in a gap, not a gap in a market. But there are a lot of folks filling gaps. And so when we did our audit and analysis of some of the leading customers, just end users in the category, we saw that on average they had more than 9 different technologies in their TA stack alone, right? Which not only is inefficient for their users, it's also just expensive, and it's inefficient ultimately for everybody that touches the entire flow. So as we did that audit, it was really interesting. And as we were looking for complementary players on certain points of that stack that were relevant to the market we believe we're building, That's how we found TalentWall. It was super organic for us, believe it or not. Like it literally was, gosh, I've had this conversation now enough times, and these guys keep popping up as the analytics platform that these companies are using, and I've never heard of them, right? It was literally one of those super organic exercises that led to us getting to know each other and confirming that, this is an opportunity to do the 1 + 1 = 3 thing. I'll also kind of just say that we're really astutely aware of having been company builders. The world's not kind to startups. A lot of our companies are getting funded, but it's not easy, right? And so to the extent that you can get any leverage, both from talent, which Jake and his co-founder Joe and Nick are super complementary to our current leadership team, but also leverage with customers and ultimately platform providers, because we both work very closely with the applicant tracking systems and the HRIS systems. And again, they don't want to have to plug into 10 more providers, right? To the extent that we can kind of become a single point to drive this market. So that's sort of the high level in terms of how this happened. It was very, very organic, though. I'll emphasize that, and just the fit between, the team, the technology, right, and the customer roster was really pretty natural and obvious.
Yeah, and from my perspective, we, like I said, we've been doing this for 5 years. And effectively been bootstrapped, and where the market is going and what we see in the market is, like, over this time, what my observation has been that you've got all these different companies and all these different players entering the market with a very specific point solution. And then from there, once they sort of nail that, then the inevitable sort of lane from there is to expand into some way. And so what we see, all these different point solutions, whether it's a email drip campaign technology or a scheduling app, or even us as 5 years ago, we were a simple pipeline visualization tool. We all expand, and the clear path that it seems everyone is taking is towards data. And so from my perspective, there's this like inevitable consolidation coming in the market. And this sort of relationship that we've created in this merger with Crosschq is, from my opinion, a first mover sort of play, like where we're getting ahead of it. We were out in the market raising our Series A, but like I said, we've effectively been bootstrapped to date. And so we needed some sort of an accelerant. And as soon as I sort of met Mike, it very quickly became painfully obvious how much of a no-brainer this was for us to join forces. Where I almost view this as like, it's almost like a fundraising round where we get an incredible leadership team, additional products to go sell to the market, and just a sort of fast forward of, call it 12 to 18 months on a product roadmap. So sort of a win-win across all levels on that front.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that all makes great sense to me. The talent intelligence requires strong analytics, and analytics requires, data points from throughout, the life cycle. So, on the, I'm not deep into either one of your firms, but on the surface, that just makes such good sense. How do you see, Mike, how do you see the TalentWall product impacting the broader platform?
Yeah, well, I mean, this was one of those things as well where we're like, oh God, we've been getting asked for this, right, from our existing customers. So it was on our roadmap, or part of their foundational product, the Wall product, which was the sort of the base level and the visualization tool, was on our roadmap anyway, just because we're playing with so much data out of these systems, and it was kind of a natural extension. So for sure, that gives us an immediate new module to add on top of our current cloud. So just to reiterate, George, I know we've covered in this past, we've trademarked this term, the Talent Intelligence Cloud, and that's what kind of sits at the heart of everything that we do. And that's really the foundation for us, is aggregate all this data and then be able to put it to work in different ways throughout the new hire life cycle. So first and foremost, that's a very natural one. We've already seen great adoption from existing customers where they're, activated the Wall product, which is awesome, right out of the gate. So there wasn't that wasn't rocket science to figure out how that one fits into our existing stack.
Okay. And it's early, so you may or may not have the answer to this. How will it fit in from a offering perspective? Will it stand alone or become part of the platform? Both? Do you have any early signals on that?
Yeah, I think, one of the sort of to my point earlier, one of the big sort of reasons for this sort of merger being such a no-brainer was that our product modules, our existing modules to date, and our future roadmap are so well aligned. And so for us, our kind of core offering besides sort of the wall, the pipeline biz stuff, is analytics. And so that's where they're at. It's all about sort of the full life cycle of that candidate and then sort of employee journey. So for us at TalentWall, where we live is basically, once a candidate is engaged, all the way to the point at which they're hired. That's our current sort of state of the world as far as our offering. And then where Crosschq comes in is sort of before that and after that. If you think of the chronological journey of a candidate and on their route to employment. And so as we think about sort of our expansion, number one, it's expansion on integrations. So one of our limitations of being bootstrapped and being such a lean team over the years is that we're limited to the number of integrations that we have, where we've got paying customers on 3 different ATSs right now, where Crosschq is effectively covering 80% of the market from an integration standpoint. And so just the general combination of that with the expansion of new integrations and the new tools going further up the life cycle, if you will, so sort of beyond the recruiting journey and then sort of into the actual employee's journey, from performance to planning out, sort of workforce planning, sort of setting up the whole idea of who do we need to go hire and how many people do we need to go hire, and managing that and strategizing that. That's kind of the general gist of sort of the combined solutions and where we're headed.
Okay. Okay. So Mike, you mentioned you have customers that are using TalentWall now, and that was a good litmus test. What impact do you see for customers now that this deal is done? And then, from Jake, from your perspective as well, curious how should customers be thinking about this?
Yeah, what's been interesting too, and we've pridefully had an extraordinarily high NPS with our customers, and I think in our diligence we learned that the TalentWall customer base had a very similar kind of loyalty and commitment from their customers. The one thing that did come out in those conversations was, we just want more. We want more. We want more. Right. And so I think that's the headline, is we now have more to offer. Right. And we're gonna be accelerating having more to offer. Right. So that's the net benefit to our customers, is having, one vendor that they can lean on to provide, additional valuable, data-driven support across this new hire life cycle. I think in terms of practical implications, zero. I mean, we're supporting all of the products. No products are getting sunset. Nothing of that nature is happening. No disruption to any service. I think they will expect to get some leverage in terms of pricing, right? Because they're going to be able to bundle the offerings and things of that nature. But it should really be viewed as a net positive and a win-win. And you would imagine we did spend extensive diligence, both with our customer base and their customer base, just to make sure that this was going to be welcome on both sides. And we're very optimistic that it will be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, from a product standpoint, kind of pointing back to my commentary on how this feels a bit like the Wild West and everybody's trying to do something with data. What's happened is, like, all of our customers have all these disparate data systems, where you've got your scheduling tool that's offering coordinator data, you've got your sourcing tool that's offering sourcing data. And we are currently and on a clear path towards being the unified module of all things recruiting and people data. So that for us is our sort of a big play from a standpoint of just trying to cover every component of not only the recruiting lifecycle, but the actual employee lifecycle as well, where they can actually have a single source of truth. Because that's one of the things that we've talked to of our customers even years ago, of like, a clear pain point is that there's all these different spreadsheets, all these different systems, different places to go for every single different sort of data piece that they need to get and understand. And obviously the clear path forward is some sort of a consolidated platform to be the single source of truth for all things sort of recruiting and hiring data. And that's kind of where we're headed.
Cool. And so we've talked about the market and the deal. We've talked about the customers. one of the constituencies that I think is largely considered but not talked about a lot are the employees. What's the reception like, and what's the upside or opportunities at Crosschq after now that this deal is done?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're really proud of the fact that everybody on the TalentWall team that came over is signed and with the company, and everybody on the Crosschq team that was here prior is still with the company, right? So there's like a very simple data point on, gosh, did we get this right? But it was really part of our thesis on the investment was driven by that point. It was, we just had unbelievable complementary skills on both sides of the table, and like no redundancy, which never happens, right? I mean, that this is part of the company, frankly, that they had built and done such a wonderful job of bootstrapping, hadn't yet put into the go-to-market side of the equation. So there wasn't a head of sales or a head of customer success or a head of marketing or a head of some of these other points. And so that's just sort of the natural synergy part of this, right? Where people fit into roles very naturally. I think from a leadership perspective, why it was such a great thing for us, as I mentioned, my co-founder and I, and sort of our roots, and as operators and founders, we haven't been in the trenches like Jake and Joe have, the co-founders of TalentWall, as it relates to being hands-on recruiters for 35 years, right? And so you see this in Silicon Valley and see this with tech companies sometimes, where we build for a state that isn't necessarily as well grounded in what a day in the life looks like of our end user. And I think that's a massive theme from a team perspective, is that they are infusing, this sort of sensibility around the actual user, right, of the products we bring to market. And it was a massive point for us. So we're like, we're batting 1,000 as it relates to the team, but the synergy thesis was really driven in large part about their ability to help influence our roadmap in that regard.
Yeah. And Jake, I mean, your team, you get much bigger wings now, right?
Massive uplifts. Yeah. I mean, we just hit employee number 22. And just for a little backstory, we were 3 of us founders for the first 4 years. And then 2021 was our year of growth, where we went from 3 to 22 people. And in that growth, one of the just many sort of serendipitous components to this deal is like to Mike's point, like where they have a head of, we don't, where we have a head of, they do, or they don't. And just like both of our teams just merged with like virtually zero conflict. Everyone's, to your initial question, like everyone's pumped and on board, and it's like we're ready to go. This is a whole new chapter of our business, which we've been grinding at for a long time, and everyone on our team is signed up, ready to go, and sort of a whole new page to turn here.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I've got one last question for each of you, and we've talked about this, through this deal's lens, but and I think the customers and practitioners out there that see this get a lot of value out of it. But we do have a lot of operators as well who consume these interviews pretty voraciously. And I'm curious, Mike, from on your side, making an acquisition and with your background, just when you're thinking about looking at the market and making an acquisition, what are the key attributes that you're thinking about in a general sense?
Well, it's so interesting. I think about that first board meeting, right, where you're introducing the deal. And of course, your investors, like, you do know that most acquisitions don't work out, right? And I'm like, well, that might be your experience. In my experience, that's not necessarily the case. But I think it's just like any other investment. I mean, for me, it starts with team and TAM. Just literally at the first level, right? At the very headline level, is this a team that can execute, and is this an addressable market that's big enough or complementary enough to what we're doing to be worth it, right? And so once you kind of can check those 2 boxes, I think you really kind of get into the you get into where the synergies are going to come from, and how long that's going to take to be recognized. And in this case, for us, in addition to what I mentioned so far on the complementary skills of the talent and the complementary capabilities of the technology, one of the other very obvious points that was amazing to both of us, because we kind of swim in similar waters, was of our combined customer roster, right, we had, less than 5% of customers in common. So, I made a comment that if I'm half right about this, we're right enough. you
There you
know,
go. Yeah.
so it is. I mean, but look, that's the thing. So in this one, that was also part of it, is was a very clear path to demonstrating, incrementality, both from, revenue synergy in addition to team and tech, but from revenue synergy from the customer opportunity. And as Jake mentioned earlier, revenue synergy by accelerating their deployment on additional platforms. Those are pretty obvious arguments to make as to why this was a good idea, even in the near term.
Yeah. I love the taking us into that first board meeting. That's I can vouch for that. And Jake, from your perspective, TalentWall's perspective, looking at being acquired, you addressed a little bit of this throughout the conversation, a few different points, but I know you weren't out looking to get acquired.
Right.
What would you tell other founders at your stage, or any or earlier stage, who are considering being acquired? What were the things that you checked off on your list to say, okay, this is why we're going to do this?
Good question. I mean, the main feedback to other founders is just like, stay heads down and just build a great business, right? Like, we've been so focused on being lean and being smart about how we build this, that, and we've, throughout the years have talked about, well, should we try to go get acquired or not? Because it felt like it's something that is a potential path in our future. But to your point, we weren't trying, we were just building a good business. And as Mike said, like, this was very organic, and it was organic for a reason. Right? We have great, passionate customers who like our product and like what we're doing. And that was obviously conveyed to Mike. I think from more to the question of like fit for this whole deal, for me, the way that I sort of described it to our team was kind of 4 buckets. You got founder fit, you got product fit, you have financial fit for us, especially as a bootstrap company, and then team fit, right? So founder fit, like Mike and Pete, soon, very early on when I met them, I was like, these guys, they know the playbook, they know this game. We, not to downplay what we've done or what we've built, but like, we're recruiters at first, and that's our training. And so this is our first rodeo, this is not theirs. And so when we think about who would we want to sort of join forces with from a leadership and business standpoint, no brainer. From a product roadmap fit, like I said, not only do today's modules currently fit in this sort of like chronological visual that I talked about earlier, but our long-term vision is super aligned as well, where sort of predictability and quality are kind of our North Stars collectively. And that, in our opinion, that's kind of the holy grail of recruiting. If you know what you have to do to get butts in seats by a particular time while maintaining that threshold of quality, you've nailed it. Like that is officially the sort of objective of recruiting. And then you talk about financial fit. We've not raised virtually anything to date. I couldn't imagine a better cap table that they have, from all the various strategic VCs that they have, from different partners. And then finally, the team fit that we already talked about, right? We're just everybody. So a lot of reasons why this made a lot of sense. And I think there's a lot of situations where this wouldn't have made sense with other companies, but this is just super fortunate and serendipitous, and yeah, all things positive.
No, that's a great answer. Those 4 buckets, I think, and any early stage founder should take note of those 4 buckets when they're looking at a deal. So you mentioned, I said that was the last question, but another one popped into my head, and we'll for the sake of time, I'll rein it in. But Mike, you mentioned just 5% overlap on your customers, and that's interesting because I met TalentWall at a Greenhouse Open conference a few years ago. And I know, Mike, you'll be at Greenhouse Open, and we did one of these in the Greenhouse Open video series. And you mentioned you have 300 Greenhouse customers. So just right. And I know that TalentWall and Crosschq are integrated with other systems, but just right there in that ecosystem, there's a lot of ground to cover with existing and new customers. So
Yeah, it's
Um,
exciting for us. It's
yeah.
exciting for us for sure.
Yeah, and normally I ask, where can folks meet you both? Will you both be at, or will both companies be at Open next week?
We will. Yeah, we'll have a big presence there at Open. I know we're also hosting a party, I believe, one of the nights. So if we don't see you in the daytime, we need to make certain we see you in the evening.
Yeah, yeah. I would suggest, anybody at Open get a hold of one of those tickets. I was lucky enough to get. I've registered. I might have been the first in your Eventbrite. I don't know, but
All right, there you go.
but I'll see you there. And otherwise, what's the best place to go to learn more about this deal?
Yeah, so well, I guess this will be airing once we have publicly announced. It'll be all over our website. So www.crosschq.com. That's Crosschq with a Q, CROSSCHQ.com. And then on TalentWall's site as well, which is talentwall.io.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, hey, thank you both. I know what a busy time this is. Thank you both for sharing your story with WorkTech, and I really appreciate your both being here.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much. See you
All
next
right.
week.
Good to
Take
see you.
care, everyone.